This is Bam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Sasha Mereu. How you doing today?
Doing fantastic. Thanks. How are you?
I'm doing fine. It's like I love to talk to people from around the world, especially creative people, and we're gonna have a good conversation. Kind of getting back to the kind of roots of the show is talking to people within the music space. But I wanted to welcome you to the Family Electric Ghost podcast, and we're going to talk about everything that FairVU is. And but before I get to that, I always ask a couple of questions before get to the heart of the story. Like, what motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
Yeah. Oh man, fantastic question. For first off, thank you very much for having me on here. So, in terms of what motivates me, I'm a bunch of different things. I'm an artist. I'm a conjurer, a musician, a performer, a writer, and all of that. But in the context of what you and I are talking about today, um, I'm here really as a musician, and my co-founder Telson and I, we are essentially two musicians with an idea. And the reason why we have started FairVU and why we are moving forward with that idea is community. Really, that's what is motivating us. Is music is something that is so important. It is a force that is so pure and so amazing for both of us. And I mean, you talk to anybody about music, and most
Yeah,
people are going to have some profound, deep connection with that. And we feel that music has been commoditized and has been made less than, and just something that has become disposable. And so we are motivated to bring status and respect back to music and art.
true. Yeah, the art.
Um, yeah,
Well, yeah, well, it's been devalued since Napster, and then iTunes and other stuff. Because
yep.
I'm a child of the '70s, so I
Mhm.
grew up, having like vinyl records, 8 tracks, 78s.
Physical things to hold on
Physical
to.
things. I
Yeah.
remember going to the Strawberries and picking up Purple Rain on vinyl.
Oh,
I
that's
had
cool.
it in, Talking Heads, speaking in tongues on vinyl. And I
Mhm.
still, and to me, it's like the experience of a record is like when you get into our heart of an artist, like the deeper tracks are what tells you who they are. In
Absolutely
this
that.
in this age of like the playlist, I feel there's a lot of fans of music that don't really know the artist they listen to. They
And it's
don't take the time to actually dive into the deeper tracks.
Well, they don't have to anymore because you no longer need to buy the entire album. You can just get the one song that's popular, or you can just get the portion of that you're hearing in advertising or whatnot. One of the things that we talk about a lot in Fairview is what we call the soundtrack of your life. And everyone, all of us, especially as older people, we have our lives have been scored. We have a soundtrack that certain songs evoke certain memories, and we really developed those as we were discovering music and listening. And those moments which we didn't really think were significant at the time, immediately we hear the one piece of music and we are back in that moment and
Yeah,
we're
of course, yeah.
experiencing it.
Like when it's like a sound painting is the way I talk about all the time.
Exactly. And
Um,
it takes more than just a playlist that's random and coming up with an algorithm to develop something like that. And yeah, the deep cuts, there
that's
it's
the whole thing. Well,
kind
you
of a
rock
lost art.
operas like Tommy. I'm a big fan of Pete and the
Mhm.
idea what he did with Tommy and Lifehouse. I'm really deep into Pete because I know about the Lifehouse. But
Nice.
but the idea that you get pulled into, which like Sergeant Pepper's, I always talk about, like gets people into the idea of an album.
Yep.
And gets all these songwriters to realize that you can take that album form, you can take the studio and use it like a canvas. So you
Mhm.
have the idea, like George Martin and Hendrix referred to, the sound painting. And I think it's kind of selling music short. It's like the cliff note that you use to figure out how to write that book report.
Absolutely that.
Like the playlist is not really, it's selling the audience short of who people are. And I do see a new generation of kids are getting into vinyl
Yep.
that want to go get into a band and then really, like when I was like, in the day when I was running chasing bands, like I was totally into Bob Mould and what Husker Du was doing, right?
Cool.
Or what Paul Westerberg was doing, right?
Yeah,
His
yeah, yeah.
replacements. I would go follow him around because like I wanted to hear that, and I thought every show was like different to me, and so it's kind of like with Funkadelic, it was
Because
the
it
same
was.
idea because
And
it
that's
was.
actually no, that's perfect. Exactly what you're talking about. You go on ride or die for that in the moment, and being able to experience that as part of your life and having that enrich you. That is what Fairview is all about, and trying to recapture that, but in a 21st century context. And we can get into that stuff
Yeah,
later. But
that's interesting because that's what I think it was really cool. Like that CBG. I used to live outside of Northampton,
mhm.
Mass, and see these bands come in. they were coming into all the venues around Smith and Mount Holyoke,
Gotcha.
and you get to see, you get to see like a lot of, Sunvolt and Sonic Youth and like any of these bands, which REM before they were big, when they
Yeah,
were
yeah,
on
yeah.
IRS,
That's cool. That's cool.
popping up. And that to me was like that college radio was my spot because I always had a big. I like bands like Alex Chilton, Big Star, Velvet Underground, like the unsung band like Death, like these
Yeah.
bands that kind
Wow.
of set things up, and only the other artists know who they are.
Absolutely that.
But that to me was like, it's not just a bad honor that you didn't make money, but sometimes you have this great concept that's like it's not widely known, but it's inspirational. It's like William Blake was the same way. Nobody knew him
Yep.
because he wasn't famous in his time. They
Yep.
found it hard,
And it was only and how tragic is that really? Because that happens all the time, that artists, they suffer through their life, they do not find success until afterwards, and all of a sudden they're blown up and they become the new standard. And they probably wouldn't have believed that was even possible when they were alive. And it's because of the state of how we treat artists in society, for what they create.
Like Sun Ra. I mean, Sun Ra today is now considered the same esteem as Coltrane and Davis.
Yeah.
People going back and looking at it, it's like, well, yeah, these guys are at the same level, right? They're doing the same. They're actually like maybe a little bit more experimental than what we'd ever seen from other people.
Sure.
But yeah, it's just to me that to me is what's interesting. Like, I don't want to hear somebody just playing a regurgitation of what's in the top 20. I was always going for the bottom 500 to find out what's going on in the underground and what's going on the mixtapes, what's happening here, is it going on in Berlin, or is it happening in Australia or Latvia or wherever it is.
Well, and especially these days, because the world has become a smaller place because of technology. The fact that one, that you and I are speaking live with that zero latency in real time, like this is mind blowing to 10-year-old me. But the fact that, yes, you had to go and actively seek that stuff out. I had I dated a girl once, my previous partner before my fiance, who was quite a bit younger than I was. We met in New York, and I'm a performer and such. But we used to go places, and she would know all of the songs that were playing on the radio at the time. And I cannot tell you the last time that I listened to the top 40 to the radio. I am so far gone and far away from that. But I've got music that is flowing in my veins and in my brain for the last 30 years of people just like you or me who made it, and it was special, it was important, it was not overproduced, it was not a product, it was in the sense of a business, it was a product of their soul crying out to mine, and there was a connection that was made, and that was just invaluable.
Yeah, because like to me, it's like you create art not always for the monetary benefit, but because it's like a cathartic exercise for the artist to get that out of themselves and get it on the page or get it on the tape or get it on the CD, whatever. And that to me is always the goal. And if you happen to connect where you get a guy like a Prince, who's like this 17-0 phenom, and he's able to be mega commercial, but super experimental.
Yep.
It's kind of like you get that like a Zappa, you get a Prince, you get once in a while, you get a guy that, or like a Bowie.
Yeah, like Bowie, exactly. Bowie, yeah.
Yeah, but today Bowie would get bored. It's like, I could be Ziggy. He could stay Ziggy forever and make tons of money. He's like, no, I'll drop it. Duke, it becomes Thin White Duke, going up Aladdin Sing. He would change it up. And sometimes he'd do something that's like, oh, it doesn't work. Well, it doesn't matter because I need to go through this.
That's one of those things that you hear oftentimes out of the punk rock world. Selling out, that's a really bad word. And I think the difference between selling out and actively seeking to make a living from your art is the fact that if you are not inspired and you're doing it anyway because you know it's going to be a paycheck, you have sold out.
Yeah.
If you are pushing yourself and you are doing that, and it's, I'm not here to make a judgment call as to whether or not that's okay or not. You got to pay your bills. And it is very, very hard to pay your bills as a musician these days. And we're going to change that. Hopefully.
Because I mean, like, if you think about it, back in the day, the Motown guys, you're working at like Funk Brothers, in-house band, people still weren't getting a large percentage of the money. They had to go out tour to get the money because they weren't the songwriters. You know, the Temps and the Four Tops, they weren't even the songwriters. So they had, in order to make a living, they had to keep on showing up, dinner clubs
Yep.
and whatever they were doing. But that's always been the rub. And now, like the streaming, like, you know, 0.04, 05, 06 of a penny.
That's it. 0.0023 is what the band has made over the last 6 years. So we went through. So I play lead guitar currently for a punk rock band that's based out of the San Francisco Bay Area. I live around like Portland, Oregon. So I work sort of remotely with them. I do not rehearse with them. But when it comes time for us to tour, I fly to whatever the first city is and jump on stage. And that time on stage is the first time we will have played since whatever the last time was.
Oh, wow.
And I come prepared. Name of the band is United Defiance. And you know, it is all about that moment of when you have to tour to make money.
Yeah.
And you also these days, unfortunately, as a musician, good luck not being on Spotify and being found. Like it's sort of a necessary evil at the time being.
Like the radio. It's kind of like they had to be on the radio to actually get people to know if you're around, and maybe you get a DJ, some payola or something going on.
Payola, exactly that.
To get out there and somebody get in a market, Chicago, Los Angeles, Boston, whatever. You get some DJ that's like connected, and boom, then you could get launched.
So we have when Telson and I started FairVU, I got super curious and I pulled the numbers for United Defiance, and we've been on Spotify for the last 6 years, starting in 2018, and this data runs up until December 31st of last year, so 2024. In that time, we have had we've got a couple albums, 2 or 3 albums, and a few singles, and like an EP up there. We've had our songs streamed 175,138 times, so a decent chunk. We are monetized, which is great.
Yeah.
For that 175K of people listening to our songs over 6 years, we have been paid $388.
Yeah, that's the problem.
As a band.
That's the problem. Is like, you know, I'm a podcaster, and podcasters, we can make more money on Spotify than musicians. We'll actually get, you know, with our CPM and stuff, we'll actually get, like, you know, a check that's bigger than that. And we're
there's
like,
less of you, first off.
Yeah,
you know,
it's a different form. It's a different form, but you know, that's part of my madness of why am I doing this? Well, it helps support some of my other art. But the idea that a music platform is going to pay the podcaster more money than the musician is like, why are you a music platform?
Well, the idea that the CEO of Spotify, and you know, I'm not calling the dude out. I've never met him. I don't know if he's a nice guy or whatnot.
I've read stuff about that.
The fact that the CEO of Spotify is not a musician, has not written a song, hasn't played in a band, and he is in charge of the world's music, $600 million dollars annually or more, like, is mind-blowing to me.
Zappa kind of predicted that kind of behavior.
Yeah.
Like, there's a couple of statements from Zappa. He said, you know, back in the day, we had some guys maybe didn't understand the music, right? But they said, well, give it a shot, because I don't get it, but I'll give it a shot. But if you get these guys that think they know, they don't know, and they're not musicians, then you're in a world of hurt. You kind of like, we're in that world right now.
The most evil things that have ever been perpetuated on the human race are always done by people who think they're doing good.
Yeah.
And
well, these guys, they think they know. But they've turned music into the thing that's a background that while you're cooking or jogging or working. So they've gotten people into this idea that music is not as much of a commodity. I always talk to this with my daughter, who's a gamer. No, we're looking at the new Nintendos, and the games are like $90.
Yeah.
For a game, right? And even like an average like PS5 game would be like $60, $70. So that world has gotten people to say it's worth it for me to pay $70, $90 for a game, but I can't even pay an artist $1. And that's like, because music is not worth as much as that game.
So, and that is absolutely, I love that you put for the title of the show, is my music really worth less than a cup of coffee? And the answer, if you're a musician in 2025 as of right now, is yes. Yes, it is worth less than the price of a cup of coffee. And we want to figure out how to not make that happen anymore.
Yeah, because I think it just became this idea when the Napster showed up. Oh, I can get it for free. And maybe the record companies were charged $18, $20 for a CD. and maybe they were overcharging or whatever they were doing. Right?
Yep.
I don't know if that was an overcharge. The musician wasn't getting a lot of that.
They weren't. I very specifically do remember a jump when I was a kid of CDs being about $10, and all of a sudden I blinked, and 6 months later they were 20 or
Yeah,
18.99
I
or whatever. And
remember
that was
that.
a
And
that was
that's
a
when
thing.
I think what Napster kind of took advantage of that.
Oh yeah.
And then people say, well, I can get it for free, or I can get, I don't want to pay $1 for a song on iTunes. And then we got started going on the road to streaming and then demonetization, like you said. It's like,
Yep.
so maybe we get to the point of what you're doing is you're a benefit corporation, and you're also like you're trying to help artists with a mission. Maybe you can talk about what's your mission and what is a benefit corporation?
Absolutely. So FairVU is it's the brainchild of my co-founder Telson and I. And essentially, what we want to do is we want to create a digital platform that is optimized for musicians to be able to do a couple things, to allow them to live stream their shows, to monetize those live streams via digital tickets directly to their fan base. And we'll get into what that's all about and why. A spot for media on demand, and also an e-commerce storefront to be able to sell merch. And we'll talk about Benefit Corporation in a sec, but these are three services that every musician needs. A lot of them, if they are up on their technology, are doing this anyway, but they are all coming from different places and different services, and sometimes there's issues with compatibility and the whole thing. And what we want to do is,
one-stop shop
yep,
of thing.
Exactly. So that it's centralized, so that when you log into our platform, you can hit a button, and you're a musician, you're playing a show anyway. You've got fans in Atlanta, Georgia, and you're playing a show in Seattle, Washington. The Georgia fans aren't going to be able to make it, but if you were able to hit a button once we have the platform launched, put a video camera onto the band, and then stream that over across our platform, and you as the band can charge whatever you want to do. We're not going to dictate what that is. We will take a small percentage of that, and we are very hardcore about saying that we want to have the majority of any profit go to the artist directly. We will take a small percentage, a small cut of that to be able to make things happen. But here's something revolutionary. I don't need to be rich. I don't need to make crazy amounts of money, billions, and be able to have helicopters, plural. I just
we don't need to be like Led Zeppelin with the big 747, whatever they had.
Exactly. Yeah.
Whatever it was. But
no, man, I'm good.
Yeah, well, that's always been like what I liked about like a punk aesthetic. Going back to the Clash and replacements.
And
who should do it?
You know what?
Underlying band is going from town to town, just trying to get it done. With Zen Arcade or something.
Man, that's a lot of my background. I came from the punk rock world. The DIY aesthetic was really the only way to do that. I mean, back in the 90s, I was born in 82, which means when the punk rock thing blew up in 94, I was only 12. So I was about 4 or 5 years too young to start going out on tour and doing all of the stuff. I started playing music back then, but I did not really have an opportunity to get out and do all of that. What is so trippy now, I've still been playing that music. I've loved it my whole life. And, here we are, I'm 43. I'm starting to play shows with those bands that I grew up with. And so much of that, it's a trip, dude. It's really cool. But so much of that aesthetic is there. Like, if you want to book a tour, go book a tour. No one is coming. No one's coming to save you. You need to do it yourself and figure it out. And what we would like to do with FairVU is to provide a place where you can do that, where the music becomes between you as the artist and with your fans. And it takes out the middleman who's artificially jacking up prices and getting rich off of your blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah, that's I mean, I back in the day when I did this, I had this thing called a Bedroom Producer Festival. I did it twice with like bands I had interviewed.
Okay.
And we did like 3-day festival from a Friday to a Sunday, where we used like StreamYard to stream the bands, and I sound checked all the bands, and we'd go like 8 hours on a Friday, on a Friday and a Saturday and a Sunday, and it ended up being like a 24-hour thing.
That's cool.
Of all these bands playing, some of them were like me. I'm a bedroom studio producer, so I got all my modes, and I would just do a show. I have a light display thing going on, but I actually would just play from my red room. And some people actually, played from their basement, played from their garage. Actually, some bands in Australia, they played from a sound stage because they had more money. And so
They could
whatever
rent
the
out a
band
spot
could
or
do,
whatever.
yeah, they did. Some bands actually created videos and used the video. But
That's cool.
the idea, like, I like what you're doing. I tried to do it at a short, just for a small period of time. I always
Yeah.
wanted to have a third festival, but I kept on getting all these problems with YouTube always like wanting to strike the
And
music.
yes, exactly. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that is happening with that. Where we are currently in terms of FairVU, and actually, let me, before we get into the current state of what's up, what is a benefit corporation? Because that is something that is different with us about stuff. So, because a lot of people hear the word corporation, myself included, and they sort of automatically assume
Like,
there's
no,
this
I don't
corporate
want that.
greed that's just
I don't
like,
want-
gimme, you know what I mean? A benefit corporation, it's a fairly new kind of entity. We incorporated ours in California, and what happens is you are okay. A corporation is made to make money. That's its only function. You have a board, and you have the workers and the officers need to report to the board to make sure that they are doing everything they can to make money for the shareholders. That is all a corporation does. A
Mhm.
benefit corporation balances that profit-seeking goal with a bunch of benefits to the community, and it is incorporated
Wow.
by law that you are supposed to you establish, here are the benefits that I'm going to be providing to the community directly, and at the end of the year, every year, via a meeting, we need to document and prove, yes, we as a benefit corporation have been going through these 6 things, these 6 pillars, these benefit purposes that we have identified.
So
So
it's kind of like a nonprofit in a way, but it's like a hybrid of a nonprofit
it's
with
sort of
money.
like that. It is profit seeking. It's a corporation, so we have shares. We do have we could go the route of investors and do the whole thing, but we have to provide community with purpose and give back to them as well. There's a balancing act that goes along with that.
So
So
you're
it's a
having,
corporation
yeah,
with purpose.
that's cool because it gives you like, if you're just totally profit motive, then sometimes you don't do things that actually benefit a community.
It's
You do
more than
things,
sometimes.
well, but it's most of the time you're like,
You
you
know,
just like you might, if you're big corporations, that you might do things to harm the community. But
hey, so long as if you can make money off of doing that, there are legitimately things that people will do to sign off and just call it good.
yeah,
One of my favorite, The Simpsons did an episode way back in the day where Lisa won an essay contest and went to Washington, and she was privy to like a back alley deal between politicians. There was a
insider
lobbyist
information.
who, like, the guy gives legit like a huge briefcase full of cash, and she hears like, hey, we just want to cut down Springfield Forest because there's a lot of profit, and he gives them the money, and the guy's like, well, how does this sound? And he closes the case of the briefcase and says timber, and she like loses all of her faith in the system and the whole thing. Corporations are there to make money. We're here to balance that. And so we've identified 6 benefit purposes that we have to prove that we are up to every year. So the first one is meaningful connections. We are so isolated today as humans, in part because of technology, and the pandemic didn't help with that. That got us all together. There's an entire generation of kids out there who just exist on their phone, and they feel so lonely and so isolated and so alone, with no hope. Social media is a part of that. And what we want to do is use our platform to create meaningful connections between the audience and the bands that they love and that they follow. And, how much more would you be willing to give as a fan if you knew that your money was going directly to support some artist that, they wrote a song that is part of the soundtrack of your life, and you are going to pay them to help pay rent, to help get groceries, to help make sure that their kids can have new shoes because they need it for school? Because all of those real life things, music and tour and all that, the showbiz looks very glamorous, and dude, it's not. All of
Yeah,
those reality things are still there, and
yeah.
they're rough.
Well, you
Um,
need to have somebody that's gonna be out there. My daughter's into being a painter. They get
mhm.
people who actually, take them under their wing and like support 'em. You get these, folks that will actually support
Yeah,
like
patrons.
painters, patrons. Yeah. So the
Yeah.
patron kind of idea, and you got to get people to understand, because I think the people got the Led Zeppelin image.
Hmm.
They got the Beatle image. Like, well, these are mega stars, and they're all. They think every musician is riding around in the Rolls. It's like, no, it's like a
That is
psychedelic Rolls, and that's, I'm not in the psychedelic Rolls Royce. No, I'm not.
seriously. And I mean, first and foremost, so I can tell you from I've been in the music industry for the last 20 years. This is what a lot of tour looks like. It's a bored dude at the wheel of a car just with road and freeway going, and there's another gas station, and that's it. It's not glamorous.
Denny's, like, I'm not eating at the fan. I'm in the Ritz. Like, I'm eating at
And
some eating an
even if
omelet.
even if you are a megastar, you're probably not making as much as people think. Snoop Dogg, in the course of the last 2 days, has announced he's pulling his entire catalog from Spotify because he has a billion, like Carl Sagan, billion with a billion streams, and he was paid $45,000 for that.
But
Like,
that's the problem. I mean, that's the problem is, like, when you demonetize music,
yeah,
and then you give all the money to, like, the Joe Rogans of the world,
mhm.
you give them all the profit to certain mega stars, and it's out of kilter to me. Like, you got to get back to the idea of, like, the sub pop, the IRS records, back
Yep,
to a CBGB's kind of community thing. Like,
absolutely.
to go,
Community is what it's all about. That
yeah,
so
that's what you want.
we're going meaningful connections is the first one. The second one is artist empowerment, and that essentially just means that we want to give artists the chance to be able to say my music is worth this. If you want to charge a subscription for your fans, and every month you get exclusive content, or you can chat with the band live, or whatever it is, like, that's going to be between the artist and their fans. We are not here to dictate and say, well, this artist is worth this much and this artist is really popular, so we're going to push it more. That's not how it's going to work with FairVU's platform. It's all about artist empowerment. If you are a creator, if you are a musician, you can do what you want to do, and go from there. This is obviously kind of an independent grassroots
Well,
sort of a thing.
do you facilitate, like, setting up the fan club for the band, or they run that?
So eventually they will be running that. We'll get to the state of where we are currently in terms of FairVU. We're not there yet, but we've got a lot of ideas and we've got a plan moving forward. We're essentially, spoiler alert, we're in the fundraising phase and we are just trying to get this thing funded. So
Mhm.
we got those first three. Community engagement is the next one, is the third benefit purpose. And this is community, sort of two ways. The first one is online, so creating those meaningful connections and being able to do things with people online, having a space where you can have an experience on our platform in real time with people. Because if you're a band and you are able to stream on our platform, guess what? Venue size doesn't matter. Geographic location no longer matters. You can connect and make friends with people from Japan or Brazil, or once we go
Yeah,
international,
yeah,
but from all over the place, and creating community that you are able to come together and be a part of, but just online. Further to that, we will be doing some initiatives in person. Occasionally, once a month, once we get everything kind of up and running and so on and so forth, FairVU is going to be sponsoring community events actually in person, collaborations between artists that you would not necessarily think would do collaborations, but also community initiatives. Let's go to a beach, we'll clean up trash, we'll do this under FairVU's umbrella. And if you are a part of our community, you can come and help take care of that and make your community a better place. It's all about making connections, because human connection is where it's at for us.
that's interesting. Yeah, like, I've always wanted to, and I have tried to facilitate, like, an online community
Mhm.
of creators, like, beyond just music, but the
Yeah,
idea that we can have these conversations, and the podcast itself has triggered collaborations. I've gone and
love
done
that.
projects because of the Rolodex of people I've interviewed. I mean, I've got over 1,200 interviews, but, maybe 400 artists I've interviewed. And in that, there's been opportunities to kind of collaborate and work on projects. I'm here in New Hampshire, and I've worked with people, like, in Sweden,
Yeah,
and South Africa, and different places, and just, like, say, hey, we never even got to physically meet, but we got to work. And that I've been doing and kind of spearheading on my own,
that's
that
cool.
type of idea. But I'm totally into people who are trying to make that a wider idea and a more consistent platform or safe place to do that. So that seems cool.
That when it comes down to it, we are stronger together. That's really what's everything is about. So fourth pillar is privacy and security. Obviously, because this is an online platform, we want to make sure that all of our users are completely secure and that their identities remain private. And so one of the main things that we're going to be doing that is different from everyone else is we are not going to be doing any data brokerage. We are not going to take your information. We're not going to sell it to a third party. There's not going to be any of that. Also, we are not going to be doing advertising based on platform. You cannot pay us to push your stuff out to everyone via the platform. If you're an artist and you have sponsors, you can do that on your, what we're calling a VU. You can do that on your thing, but FairVU itself is not going to be telling you what you want to see. We are going to utilize an algorithm that actually reflects your interests as a user, and to go from there and allow that to guide you and discover new people and go from there, keeping people secure.
That's awesome, because I think a lot of people are kind of tired of algorithms.
Dude, they're exhausting. I mean,
they keep on changing them every 5 seconds. So like, even once you get to, oh, my hashtags don't work. Oh, now the AI is reading my description. It's reading the actual body of my description.
Yeah.
When I thought it was reading the SEO and the hashtags, and now it's reading that, and now I got to write that in such an awkward way.
Exactly.
Algorithm that is like, it doesn't even make sense.
we are at such a point in terms of technology where we have an opportunity to be able to use it to bring ourselves closer to one another, and it's stuff like that where now you are having to write a machine. You know, if you've ever going and looking for a job these days, incredibly difficult, more so than it was, because you've got to be sure that you can get past. You were writing for AI to recognize you to get to a human.
I mean, if you go on the LinkedIn's and the career builders of the world, they're turned into Instagram.
Exactly.
Right? And it's like, well, I'm trying to get a job. I'm not trying to be an influencer. like what? So I had to go the old-fashioned way and go through my Rolodex. I'm an IT guy, right? And I just called some guys I had worked with at a startup. And said, do you need anybody? And that worked so much better. And I just still recommend to people, like, kind of go old school with like
connections.
Rolodex, call somebody on the phone, send them an email, talk to them physically. Like this game within the systems is a hard game to win.
It is.
Connections are, like you're saying, to having a community, having a group of people that have like ideas and then pull them together. It's kind of like I always talk about the CBGB days. You know, you had, the Ramones, you had, Blondie, you had, just the Patti Smith and the Talking Heads, all in that same place. None of those bands are the same.
No.
Right. And they're all in that same space. So it's like these spaces don't have to just be one thing. They could be a lot of things.
And that goes along with that isolation thing. We are so good now at putting things in boxes, and things have become homogenized in music. Rick Beato talks often on his channel about how music is becoming so much more the same, because when something is popular, the algorithm prioritizes that and only shows you things that are similar to that, because that's what's popular. And it's this like vicious positive feedback loop.
Yeah, it's just totally, to me, it's like I find it like the punk aesthetic is to kind of break that. I don't want to hear the pretty things, Johnny Lydon.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to kind of do it to like, not to be like antagonistic, but that's what he was. He would do it just kind of get a rise, but also the punk aesthetic is like, I don't have to have perfect pitch. I don't have to be totally in time. I don't even have to be maybe tuned up all the way, right? I have to have the passion to get out there and show that I got a feeling. Like with Joe's drummers, like I'm out there and have a passion play that I feel like there's, the Clash is the most important band in the world. Well, no one else is going to believe that if I don't believe it. So you got to believe
100% that. No, that's amazing. Actually, that's a really cool way of putting that. So we've got those. two left, and they're both super easy. And these are more kind of internal for what the kind of corporation that we want to be here at FairVU. The first is a supportive work environment for our workers. As a benefit corporation, once we get to a place where we are funded and we start to hire people, we are going to prioritize workers' health. We will give our people, one, a salary that is commensurate with the work that they're doing and what they're up to show that we appreciate them. Full benefit package, medical, dental, vision, because eyes and teeth are not add-ons. I don't know.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Where that
music is like, oh, that's afterthought. You go buy it, you go find it on the out there in the market.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And then in addition to that, we are going to be providing a stipend every month for health, both physical and mental, a gym membership, something like that. If you want to take yoga classes, if you want to get into running and you want to do a running club and there's a subscription to that or whatever it is, we would reimburse for that. And then also an entertainment budget that we would do per month, because this is ultimately a company that is about music. And we've got grand ideas to branch out past that eventually at some point. But we're not there yet. We'll get there. And then
startup. You're in
startup phase, we are a startup currently. And then the last thing is 1% of everything that we make, gross, not net, per year, goes to an environmental cause. And Patagonia was actually the inspiration for that. That is something that they do, and we were reading through some of their documents. And we all know that the Earth could use it, the atmosphere could use it, the oceans could use it. Get
rid of the VOCs and all the microplastics. Yeah.
Exactly. So the state of FairVU currently is it's two musicians with an idea. We are in our fundraising phase. We are trying to get this thing funded. It's going to take us probably between $1 million and $1.5 million to get to beta. And, a lot of what we're up to is we are producing content. We're doing interviews with a bunch of bands. I do something called a healthy view, where I will do something good for my health while listening to new music to me and sort of reviewing that and driving traffic to all of those sites. And I just pick those bands based upon people I come across and musicians I've toured with and things like that. And I want to get every independent artist to get on board with us and join the FairVU community.
Oh, I do. Yeah, definitely, because I'm tired of the nonsense we're getting like $30 for like hundreds of thousands of streams.
Yeah, it's not okay. And I think that's how we're going to be funded. We had originally thought, like, we're going to reach out and ask for some savvy investors, and we'll see if we can get 4 people to give us $500,000 each. And we realized, okay, if 1 million musicians out there gave us $1, like, that would get us to beta.
Yeah, that's like the kind of like at the grassroots level, like,
yes.
Political parties realize, like, if I get a bunch of $20 donations versus getting $200 million donations, like yeah, the 200 million are big, but if you can get that grassroots thing and you get the movement going and people to show up and people to realize they can connect, and you actually give them access for the 20.
Well, and so it's ownership. So what you can do if you happen to be listening to this and you want to support what we're up to, or even if you're just curious, you can go to our website, which is fairvu.net, fairvu.net. Watch our videos on YouTube. We have a call to action video for all musicians. And here's the thing, it's regardless of genre. This is not just a punk place. This is not a place for metal or rock or hip hop or jazz. It's like everything. Both my co-founder Telson and I, when we were learning music, because like we met in middle school band, and we learned classical music growing up. I grew up playing string bass, which my daughter's doing now, and that's super trippy and amazing and cool. And also jazz. I learned how to play jazz for a long time in funk, and that was sort of the formal education. And then the informal one was I would play punk rock music after school. And obviously, in the 90s, there was the internet, but ultimately guitar didn't have everything. You had to listen and play and be bad and then figure it out and go from there. And it was sort of the best of both worlds. So I love music just as an art form, whether it's opera, whether it's,
That's why I think any musician that's still playing, whether or not they're making a lot of money from it, most of the musicians I know, that I'm 57, but the guys who are still doing it at my age, a lot of us is like, this because we love to play. And it doesn't really matter if we're making bukus of money. It's the fact that we just like the art form, and we just like the idea of doing it.
Well, and I heard a joke once that jazz musicians are the only people who will work a full 8-hour shift and then go somewhere else and continue to work for free. And it's you don't need to make beaucoup bucks, like you said, but it would certainly be nice to be able to make some off of that, enough to be
Oh
able to
yeah, it would
pay your
be great
bills,
to the idea, like, I've always been this concept of expansive sound is kind of like my moniker
Yeah.
for the ghost stuff I do. And it's a mixture of kind of a basically progressive rock mixed with a punk aesthetic,
Nice.
and then it has some jazz, and it'll go everywhere pretty much, because sometimes it'll be Beatle-esque and sometimes it'll be like funkadelic-esque, or it'll
Mhm.
be wherever it's going to come from. I mean, it might be channeling Paul Westerberg one day, or Bob Mould, or
Well, and it's cool
anybody.
because it exists in the moment. That we were talking before the cameras were rolling about flow state, and just getting into that and riding along and seeing what happens. So
Yeah,
that
the happy
that's
accident,
super
the
cool.
flow state, or just kind of the idea behind, modal jazz. Or you think about like what Dave Davis was doing.
Hmm.
A lot. There was sketches of what they were going to do with
Yeah.
the early bebop, but they were just master musicians and say, let's see what works. And they had a feeling, and they were really top shelf musicians, but
Oh
they
yeah.
didn't try to overthink it. They kind of felt it. It's a lot of idea like, don't you feel it? Don't you
There's
hear it?
there's that old joke of like, if you have to ask, you'll never know. Like
Yeah, if
that's
you gotta tell me, it's like,
you got to feel it here.
where is this going? It's like, if you don't know, maybe you shouldn't be in the room.
No, so anyway, go and check out our website. We are currently we have an online store, and we're selling 3 virtual products essentially. All of the money goes to help to build this thing. There are videos explaining what each one is, and it's all affordable prices. If you're into music, if you are a musician yourself, if you would like to get away from all of the BS that is happening, and help us forward the path to be able to help you, like, let's do this together. That's
That's
really what
cool.
it's all about.
Well, I always let people know that the links we have here, like FairVU.net, that is fully clickable within the podcast description on whatever channel we're on.
Thank you.
And we do encourage people to click that and to get further details about what we've been talking about by clicking on the links of the people who are on the show. And being a musician, everybody who's in the music space knows today that it's a real fight, that a lot of times your T-shirt or your poster or your button will make more money than your song.
100% that.
And we've got to figure out a way to get people to value our art again. Platforms are ideas that where we can collaborate and try to think it out, like whiteboard it out together.
Yeah.
Like that's the way to do it, because like just accepting that you're only going to get 0.004523 whatever of a penny,
Yeah.
and saying, well, I guess that's what it is like, no, that doesn't have to be what it is.
If
You can
you're
make it something else.
I'll tell you what, if you're young and you're watching this, um, real talk for a sec. If you go to see a band or an artist live and you buy a t-shirt from them, you buying that t-shirt is the same essentially as listening to one of their songs on one of those streaming platforms 6,000 times. Like, that is how valuable it is for you to show up and do something real and in person rather than just listening to a stream. Because here's the thing. Is my music really worth less than a cup of coffee? When you listen to a song from a musician, it's not just the song. You are listening to all of the years that they spent learning their art. You're listening to all of the hours of practice. You're listening to all of the mistakes that they've done. You're listening to all of the frustration that went into that, to trying to make it match what it sounds like in here to actually what was
Yeah,
going on and being recorded. And like, that is a beautiful process. And that is something that it's invaluable, and it is something that could add even more value to your life moving forward. Maybe that next song that you find by physically buying something, one of the deep cuts like we were talking about before, maybe that song starts to define the end of a relationship and it helps you through. Maybe that song defines a section of your life where you just had a kid, and it's hard to remember what's happening because you're sleep deprived, but you always have that song and all of the emotions that are going on with that
what's the
music is.
soundtrack? Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
soundtrack of people's lives, And people are devaluing that form of art where a painter that gets into a gallery can have a patron
Hmm.
filmmaker could get a lot of people to fund a film, but musicians, we've been not able to get that patronage as much as we could.
Yeah.
I think we could do a lot better. And so a platform like yours is like maybe getting people to realize that, it may be part of the thing is like, A&R doesn't want to show you, well, I'm a starving artist. Maybe
Hmm.
they don't want to paint that picture, want to paint you in it, but we have to be real, and we've got to get people to understand, like, when you buy my, like if you buy a vinyl that
Yeah.
an independent band puts out, and you give them like the $25-$30, they make so much more than if you listen to them on Spotify. So
Yep.
if you and
100%.
if you support them even on people bring back cassette tapes. If you buy that cassette tape, you buy the thumb drive they give you, and it's got a poster with it with a little button or pin.
Yep.
That is going to help them out. That's going to help pay for them to get to the next gig, pay for the recording session. Because everything we do, we have to pay ahead of time before you even get it.
Yep.
Like all the time that we have to spend on our instruments, we have got to buy our equipment, we got to pay for recording engineers or pay for the equipment to do it. There's so many costs, and people don't understand. It's like we tend to just eat the cost.
Yeah.
Because we're so into the art that
The
we eat
creative
it.
process of it, that this is a part of who I am. I can't tell you how many over the course of the last 20 years, how many of my vacations that I've had to take off from a day job and get approved that I was going to be using my vacation to go on tour. So essentially I could be working. Like that's the reality of it. Tour,
Yeah,
it sounds very glamorous, and a lot of people are using their vacations to go and do that. Get in the van and let's go.
yeah. You have that. You have your gig that's supporting it, and you gotta ask for your vacation time, so you can't go off to the Bahamas because like you're so passionate, you want to get it to the world,
Yeah.
or you're putting that effort to get that vinyl. So when you show up at the merch table, that you have it,
Well,
that you had to put that together. You had to fund it because nobody's giving you that without you putting up the upfront work.
for sure. And I'll tell you what, I'm not gonna go on a full rant here, but I am gonna point something out to your audience, and that is, if you think back to 2020, when the pandemic was going full swing and we were all isolated, the entire world turned to artists, to musicians, to storytellers to be able to get them through that. We were so
Yeah,
isolated and freaked out, and everyone turned to art to be able to help them and keep them sane and get them going. Musicians cannot make a living currently doing what we're doing because we do not value what they do. They save the world
you don't
and we
value.
are not supporting them. So
Yeah,
I'm not here yelling at your audience saying you guys all suck. I'm saying be a little mindful about what's happening, and together we can change
yeah.
this.
Also, it's like a value. Like you got to start valuing art, and then you look at
Yeah.
what are you spending your money on? Are you spending it on a real expensive cup of coffee? Are you spending it on a video game?
Yep.
Like so if you're gonna spend all your disposable income and give it to the gaming community, and maybe you're more of a gamer than a music fan.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fine. But if you start to if you start to look at the independent musician, the musician that makes you actually want to show up at that club, and maybe you get so excited that you follow them to the next gig.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to get kids to remember, is that's what people in my day, that's what we used to do. Like we go to these festivals, and I would go watch like Pearl Jam 3 times,
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly.
or go watch Green Day a bunch of times and
Yeah.
follow and go to every gig. They go to Boston, they go to Rhode Island, go to New Hampshire, like that's what we, instead of buying a video game. So I mean,
Because
I'm just saying, like, maybe you could think, maybe get outside the house, get
yeah.
out, get off the system, and get back into the club scene, and check these bands out.
And at least until FairVU can get its platform up, and then connect with everybody online as we're doing it,
Yeah, yeah, but
But
just to be out there, I think is to get the mindset of the. I always feel, and maybe this is a hard thing to people to get,
Mhm.
but I think the audience has to do a little work. I,
Yes.
I think we need to have
Yes.
an audience that gets music literate. right? That audience that can have the patience to listen to an entire thought of an artist and listen to the whole record, right? And
Yeah.
then maybe go beyond that, listen to their other records, right? And then maybe find out who they hang out with and listen to the bands they associate with, and start to kind of pick up that like sub pop scene. I
That's
was
it.
listening to sub pop before Nirvana broke, and I was listening to a lot of those Seattle bands, and I was like, wow, well, Nirvana's the one that really kicked off. But I saw a lot of them that were really good, right? And I'm like, I was just into that whole scene. And
Yeah.
so like, you can get into that scene, right? And get into that mindset of like, these are people who are trying to bring you something out of themselves. And
Well, and
you can identify with it.
if you're feeling isolated, music is an amazing way to connect with people and not do that anymore. So many of my friends that I have met over the course of touring for years and years and years came from music. I could go to almost any city in the United States and a bunch in Europe and several elsewhere, and have a place to stay and have a couch to sleep on at least, because we connected over music, or whether it was my music or whether it was a band that we both were
Yeah.
loving. I mean, the last time that United Defiance toured to Canada, I ended up flying to Toronto day before the rest of the band. They were all coming from San Francisco, from that area. And I was early, and I ended up staying with a fan of ours who I had met for 3 minutes at a festival 2-3 years earlier. And she found out like via Facebook. I said, hey, I'm coming to Toronto, does anyone have a spot to stay? And she was like, dude, Sasha, come with me. And she took me into her house. Her parents were there. I got to meet them and hang out. The whole band ended up staying for 3 or 4 days. Like, we had an amazing time, and we are all friends moving forward for forever,
Yeah,
because
that's
we
the
have
kind
this.
of connections you have,
Yeah.
like with Jack Kerouac on the road,
Yeah,
less travel. You get out there and you experience life instead of being scared. I think we got a whole generation of people, multiple generations, who are just like traumatized and sitting in a room.
for
And
sure.
like, you need to have permission. Well, I'll give you permission to get out of the room, out of the
Here,
house.
here's your permission. Here's your call to action. Get out there, see some live music, go ride or die with a couple of bands, love what they do. And I'll tell you what, if you're interested in helping FairVU and support that, do not buy an expensive cup of coffee next week. Go to our website, donate $5. I should say contribute, because we are not a nonprofit, so it's not tax deductible. But
Yeah.
there's stuff that we have. Our virtual store is there, and all of that is going to help to build a better future for all musicians. So come and join us.
Yeah, I agree with what you're doing, and I'm all for it, because I think we need alternatives. We need people to provide those alternatives, and so you're taking an idea and you're taking action, and that to me is a cool place to start. And when you get everything fully out there,
Mhm.
we love to have people come back to the
Yeah,
show, and so
absolutely.
we'd love to do that, and we'll be checking in on you and seeing what we can do. But yeah, definitely, this sounds like a cool thing. I'm gonna do further, like check it out, what I can do
Right.
on your platform. But I know you're in the startup phase. We'll see where we can go with that. But thank you.
Thank you. Last.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being on the show. I just have to jump to another interview, but thank you. All right.